Hello everybody, welcome to my vlog. Today we are going to be discussing Laline Paull's The Ice, which was published this week. Can you see that? Yeah, the glare's pretty bad, but I can promise you we are discussing Laline Paull's The Ice. Now, if like me, you read Laline's debut, The Bees, you'll probably have the same sense of anticipation and excitement as me, as I adored The Bees. Bailey's Prize shortlisted, a completely original and compelling novel that just had me hooked. So refreshing and completely visionary. And there it is on my shelf, Telltale Yellow Spine. I adored that book. So Laline is back with the difficult second book, because how do you follow up such a compelling debut? Well, The Ice sees Laline back in world creation mode. For this book is set the day after tomorrow. We are some years in the future and climate change has irreversibly changed our planet. The polar ice caps have melted. And in this story, we focus in on the friendship of two men, Tom and Sean. Two men who've been obsessed with the Arctic their whole lives. But whereas one, Tom, wanted to save the Arctic, Sean wanted to control it. So Sean became a businessman, and he ended up getting the rights and ownership to Midgard, the last outpost in the North Pole. And in a freak accident that is set 4 years before the start of this novel, their friendship took an extraordinary turn, where Tom was apparently killed in a freak accident as he visited Midgard. The only thing is, Tom's body was never recovered, and question marks have always hung over Sean about what happened on that day. Now, 4 years later, we find Sean at the heart of some very desperate, shady deals as government influences and big business encroach on him, desperate to get shipping rights and access through the fresh waters over the North Pole, transport links that could shatter their, bring down their transport costs dramatically and change the way capitalism works, make it even more profitable. But also at the same time, there is a freak melting of one of the last remaining glaciers in the North Pole, and Tom's body is finally, suddenly revealed. And so we leap into an inquest that has been 4 years in the making. What happened on that night in Midgard? Was Tom really killed in an accident? And really, are there any other shady dealings at play here? That is the setup for The Ice, and it sounds compelling, isn't it? There's a lot of things to recommend this novel. Firstly, world creation. This is exploring everything about what's over the horizon. Climate change is coming, and the power politics of that are already present. You already have the Russians putting their flags at the bottom of the Arctic Ocean. You already have the Chinese and the Russians arguing over who's going to get access to links. There are people desperate to get their ships over the North Pole rather than go the long way round. And what I really liked about that is how fully fleshed out this is here. The chapters set in the Arctic are so evocative and so compelling. Just some very beautiful scenes and very vivid descriptions of a barren wasteland and the few remaining polar bears. It's very moving and completely believable and absorbing. I also loved the whole man versus nature theme that's recurring in this book. And I also particularly like the way Laline weaves in how Tom and Sean are the last in a sort of now broken link of Arctic explorers, men who throughout the centuries have wanted to be pioneers in this sort of impossible terrain and to really conquer that. And I really found that believable and wonderful. However, there are some challenges when you take on, obviously, a story that big, an idea this big, and that is, of course, as you can imagine from the amount of words that I'm saying, there's a lot of exposition here. There is a lot of scene setting. In fact, so much so that I would argue that the book doesn't really hit a pace till page 150. That's a lot of pages to get through to really when the story starts, and that story starts with the inquest. So page 150 is when the inquest into what happened with Tom, what happened between Tom and Sean, and what was going on at Midgard at the time. That's the really compelling, exciting part of this book. Before that, we're dealing with a lot of character development, and to be honest, there's a lot of tricky tropes here that I didn't like. Sean, the central character, is thoroughly unlikable. He has all the, you know, he's divorced, his daughter doesn't like him, she hates him, he's got a horrible mistress who's really cruel, he's obsessed with money, he's always picking up pretty young women. He's just a sleaze, and I remain unconvinced that Sean is ever fully developed into an anti-hero, so it's quite hard for us ever to empathise with him. I mean, you just don't like him, which I expect is deliberate, but it does mean it's difficult for the reader to engage. However, once the inquest starts, it's very exciting. Laline avoids the trap of us being stuck in a courtroom where two people are explaining what happens, and actually puts us bang into the middle of events that happened 4 years ago, all as if it's current, all as if we're right there in the immediacy of the events. And that is the heart of this book, and it is terrific. If you look at my Goodreads, you'll see, however, that I did give it 3 stars rather than 4, and I was teetering between the two. Do you know when sometimes you read a book and you're really rooting for it? I mean, you're really rooting for it and you want to come through. And I was really rooting for the ice because Laline Paull, her imagination fascinates me, and she's a writer that I think is incredibly exciting, and I really want to support visionary writers. But what really pulled me back, from the 4 stars was really the last 20-30 pages of this book. Laline obviously wants to build up to a very dramatic climax, and I did feel that some of the events towards the finale were getting a little bit preposterous, and I wasn't entirely sure that the foundations had been built in the run-up to that, which breaks my heart. There's a lot of people saying that this book could be the surprise hit of the summer. That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me because the heart of this book is terrific and it's exciting. And you know what? As I was reading this, I just thought this would really benefit from screenplay treatment, because if you know anything about screenplay writing, screenplays have to be incredibly tightly plotted. And of course, you don't have 5 hours to read a book, you have 2 hours to watch a movie. So all the extraneous information is dumped or it's placed visually rather than through narrative. And this book would really benefit from the screenplay treatment, because I was so rooting to take out the component parts of this book and put them in another order so that the narrative drive was full and compelling for the full length of this book, and that we were given more time with Sean for him to be a bit more nuanced, so a bit more depth and a bit more contradictions. However, 3 stars does mean a good book, and I did enjoy The Ice, I did, and I would recommend it to people if you really, like me, enjoyed the bees and like books with vision. However, I would say be patient with it in the first 150 pages. The Ice, Laline Paull.